Okay, so good morning everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Again, internet has made it a little bit difficult, but probably it will hold now. Let's make some silence first. Silence. Abstraction from noise, agitation, beliefs, delusions, wisdoms. Untouched. Nothing matters. Okay, welcome all. For those of you out there that have the calling in your heart for the reconnection, for the dissolution into the divine, let me explain something for you which is quite important. Most of you strapped yourselves into philosophies that seem the thing, and you hold on to it, and that is not really see, there's a very difficult thing. There is an expression that may be not very fortunate, which is going within, and there is, from the same expression, we can put it in other words as abstracting from. And there is another expression which we can say coming closer to the center of the eye. Or we can say also remaining at the center of the eye. These are different expressions that may resemble different philosophies and approaches, but they are just pointing the same phenomenon in different words. If you have the perception, if you have the vision, if you don't, you may take it superficially and seeing conflicting aspects, like they are not speaking the same, they are conflicting with themselves. The process of awakening has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with philosophies. So from the lowest, the most blind state of the seeker to the highest state before enlightenment, different things will be needed, different. And what guides this, if it is a process of awakening, if you're not fighting against it, because you will be fighting against it, and if you have not trained this character to surrender, to aspire, to remove darkness and obstacles, then you will be holding on to these external things, and justifying and holding on and trying to reason and reason and reason, and this doesn't go anywhere. The process of awakening is a living process. Life is guiding. Divine life is guiding. There is presence, there is direction. And at different stages you may enter, you may dive into the waters of one system of knowledge, of wisdom, and immediately next it will make no sense and you'll go to the next one. So instead of wasting time holding on to these structures, you have to learn to be fluid, understanding that everything is a moment guided by the divine hand. So if you're holding on to a philosophy, there is no guidance, there is no life in the process, and you're just studying it, that's no process of awakening. Maybe from all of that, life will begin. Maybe. But that's not the thing yet. So for everybody that has this need, this quest of awakening, instead of wasting time already and diving studying so many things, pick up a meditation technique, something. Intensify your practice. Make the connection with the divine your goal, so that guidance may be there, so that the process begins. Or else you'll just be wasting time. Because it doesn't matter which system you are studying. You will be studying that which suits the present logic, and that means nothing. It doesn't matter if it seems the lowest philosophy or the highest one. If it fits your world, it fits your illusion, nothing changes. Absolutely nothing changes. So it's not about mastering a philosophy. What means to master a philosophy? It's to go beyond dogma, the dogma of the philosophy, and to touch the life which is behind the words of that specific philosophy. So, okay, so this specific philosophy that I'm feeling attracted to is saying that this and this and this is like this. And it makes sense to me. I can see a logic in it. I understand it. Wow. So now you just go and defend that philosophy towards everybody and try to convince everybody? No, you go to the next level. And the next level is to see for yourself, to touch the life of that philosophy, that which is behind, that which that philosophy is pointing. That is the purpose. Or else it's just replacing the bricks of your delusion by another bricks. You have to see for yourself. And that is moving beyond automatical. Behind all philosophies, behind all sacred teachings, behind scriptures, there is divine life. And those things are just a means to connect to that. If you don't connect, it makes no difference. So there was maybe not a question, because, well, but someone made a comment in the post that was made, and I will answer this because I like this question, and it's an opportunity to say something, because usually the posts are made with images, specific images of the divine, of God. And the post was about leaving the belief systems, dogmas, and all of that. I don't remember the rest. But in the picture there was this image of Vishnu, I think. Yes. And the question was, the very picture of your posting is based on a belief system. Well, there is a question mark, but not really sure if this is a question mark, but okay. You see, as philosophies, as religions, as all of this, everything is pointing to something which is beyond the words. Everything. So with religions, the same thing. So belief systems is something as a religion or a philosophy that you go through this process that I described previously. You find yourself attracted to that. You see the logic, you understand the logic, it makes sense to you. and you spend your time defending that instead of investigating that, instead of making the level best to realize that. So that is a belief system. If you're not trying to see directly for yourself, then it's just a belief system. But that doesn't mean that the life isn't there behind that. It doesn't mean that if you go really through those things, you won't be touching that life. And unless you touch that life, you keep quiet. Keep quiet. Because if you're not keeping quiet, you're doing something else with that belief system. You're using it to maintain the character in his external endeavors. So you keep quiet, you believe it, you keep quiet, you make no noise, and you dive into it until you see it directly. And it seems a contradiction to see an image of God and saying, let go of all belief systems, but it isn't. You see, it doesn't matter which image of God it is there. God exists. It is the face of pure life, of infinite. Like a bridge from delusion to reality. One foot in reality, another foot in delusion. Everything is connected by love. Only love exists. So there's no contradiction absolutely whatsoever. If you're looking at an image and you're seeing a belief system, centuries of belief system, of people just believing and worshipping without seeing, well, that is one thing that your eyes are allowing you to see. But if you see that image, that representation of God, and you immediately connect to that life, that is something else. Has nothing to do with dogma or belief systems. A dogma or a belief system is something that you don't touch. It's not real for you. It doesn't matter how much you believe. But it is the same life that goes through behind all of these philosophies, religions, or whatever. And they are presented in ways that everybody in their level of perception can reach or can aspire to reach. Nothing is definitive. Only truth is definitive. So it's like going through a staircase or different staircases with different angles that go to the same place. And when they say, oh, but this step here is much better than that, you have no idea. And as they are arguing, they are not moving from there. But description is not described. How can we inquire, investigate, and discover? Well, my friend, you are really convinced that divine is something mental, and by crossing these and elaborating a more complex or refined concept, that will be the the word is Dharma responsibility is the action or karma that joins us to the cosmic intelligence of the ultimate. Well, is this poetry, my friend? But how did we separate from the real to the unreal? Did we? Knowledge that created the noise destroyed the crystal clear clarity of the soul. Wow. So the absolute got messed up by knowledge. That is a nice idea. Belief, ideas, and theory created the illusion of the ego, the idea of the I consciousness. Are you really sure? Because I can tell you that it is the other way around, because, well, but this is not about trying to understand anything, and if I'm interpreting not the right way, please, you can clarify it. The number is there. If you're watching, you can clarify it. But promise being put here is not... it's just the need to affirm that which you're holding dear at this moment and not to clarify. Because what I can tell you, if you're willing to reflect on it, is it that this is just mental. There's nothing of spiritual work here. And these ideas may have they may make sense in your mind, but nothing could be more away. And another thing which I'm going to comment here, another comment, I will not enter into the rest because there was a lot of exchanges, but I don't, no importance in that. But one part I will comment here. One cannot practice meditation. Practice means controlling the mind. Practice and control means thought is trying to control another thought. How can thought control another thought? It is the understanding sets you free. Well, my friend, you have no idea what meditation is. That I can tell you directly. You must have read somewhere or practiced a little bit, and you think you have seen it all, but you have nothing, absolutely no idea what meditation is. Logically, it may seem like a good reasoning, but it isn't. So it's not... One thing is for sure, meditation, it's very difficult to practice. And there's different types of meditation according to different types of maturity of seekers. But it is a road towards silence. It has nothing to do with control. Control is a very... it's a not very enlightening word. For sure, those who start meditation, majority, they are in this vision of trying to control the mind and all of these things. And probably these are the ones who are making the literature now. But when maturity dawns with the continuing of the practice, and it's not for all because not everybody continues, then this word loses that meaning. It has to lose that meaning. So just because the same tool is being used in kindergarten and then in college, it doesn't mean that its meaning is the same. Meditation has nothing to do with controlling the mind. Absolutely nothing. It is a path towards silence, towards abstraction. You start holding your mind to a meditation technique, And there's this idea from the one who is practicing, that there's somewhere that the mind has to go, entering a higher state of consciousness. And there is this struggle trying to reach that state of consciousness. And this is just immaturity. But it is a part. What is really happening is that you're holding on to a specific technique and you're abstracting from everything else. And in that process of meditation, this everything else tries to come to get your attention, and you hold on to the technique and you abandon these things. This is one of the most important aspects of meditation. At the same time, if it is not intellectual meditation, if it is not skeptical meditation, that means that you are tuning into God, tuning into the divine. So at the same time that you are letting go of the mundane, of the worldly, of the story of the character, you are tuning to these higher frequencies, allowing them to permeate your mind, and that brings the dissolution of thoughts. Not a thought controlling thoughts, but the dissolution of thoughts. If you're practicing a mantra, for example, that specific mantra has a vibration. It's very different from the vibration of a normal mind, agitated mind, dense mind. And as you practice it, that vibration starts vibrating in the mind and starts dissolving, making it lighter. How do you say this? Oh, the contrary of dense. I don't remember the word. So it reduces this density. It brings this divine vibration. In the beginning, usually it is quite mechanical, these mantras. But then with time, if everything goes correctly, devotion starts to come into play with the mantra. And that's when its power increases exponentially. You're dissolving the worldly vibrations, the dense vibrations, and you are filling your mind with divine vibration. Some of you that may have not experienced any of that haven't gone through any of that, may say, but what is the difference by having a worldly vibration or a divine vibration? Isn't it vibration? Isn't it the same delusion? Yes, well, it's like you're in the other side of the room. Your back's against a wall. And there's a door out of that room which is in the opposite direction, in the other wall. And you want to reach the door to get out from it. Well, if your backs continue against that wall, it will be impossible no matter how you try. But if you're close to the other wall, close to the door, it's just one step. Poof, it is like this. Logic has nothing of absolute. And those of you who say, but this is my truth, it isn't. That is your illusion. It is different. Because truth is something that you have touched directly, seen directly. And those who went through this, they know that words cannot touch it. Can only point something which is abstract in nature, comparing to that which appears to be concrete, which is mental, emotional, physical, energetical experience. But in reality, that mental, physical, emotional, energetical, that is abstract, and that which is called abstract is concrete, the only thing that really exists. Okay. Okay, my friend, I will answer your question now. And differently from what you were saying, that it is a specific question, it may not be suitable for general satsang. Well, general satsang is really made with specific questions. And what is left without specific questions is something that may arise specific questions. So in a sense, there's no such thing as a general satsang. And if those who have questions, and those who are watching, they have questions, but instead of waiting for the answer to come, if you would put your questions, that would make the satsang more richer for everybody. So this was the continuing of a previous question that was made, and I said in the previous question that if it was just for intellectual curiosity, there was not much to say. So no, it is not for intellectual curiosity. I had before a lot of questions, but since profound meditation experience, all were answered. I decided to ask this question because for me it is linked to deep fear inside of me. I have to completely drop my ego identity, but when the Sadguru comes to take it, the fear is immense. It feels impossible. I thought that if you talk on this subject, it might help to solve the fear. And the subject was, what is the difference between the absolute and deep sleep, I think. Dreamless deep sleep and the absolute. I'm not able to precise the question because it is fear emotions. So hard to put in words. I think the format is just not ideal for that. Thank you for the satsangs. I will follow them. They help to intensify the process. Okay. So that is a normal part. And that is why in the old days, when seekers were not so smart, so intelligent, this is a little bit of irony, yes, of course. There was something that is called a living process, and I'm not talking to you directly, I'm just generally speaking. And through these processes, there was other things that were connected to them. All those things that seekers try to bypass now, and that is sacrifices, choices, surrender, surrender, surrender. And this surrender part is a very important part. This is why these sacrifices are needed, because of surrender. You see, it doesn't matter how much the character has seen, or the ego as you were calling it. If it is not in tune with surrender, if it has not been surrendering and surrendering and surrendering until there's nothing left, and when there's nothing left, there's something still there to surrender. If it hasn't gone through this intensely, this process of letting go, surrendering, letting go, surrendering, surrendering, this fear will always arise. And the more you know, the more you understand, the worse it will get in a way, mentally understanding. And it will always seem like a gigantic wall. It doesn't make sense, even because there are experiences there and all of this. But sense, like I explained, has nothing to do with, so this fear of dissolution, there's the aspiration for dissolution, for the merging with the divine, but like instantly, at the very core of this survival instinct, that seems like death. And for one to surrender its life, it has to go, it has to have gone through a lot of these process of surrendering, of giving, of sacrificing, all of these things. So that can be possible. So the more you try to understand it mentally, the more you try to convince yourself, the more you're giving structure to this character. And for those who speak today about Neo-Advaita and all of these things, just those who just speak it from their minds, and they make beautiful arrangements of words, they don't even know what this is. This experience of this deep fear of dissolution. So this deep fear is something connected to instinct, to ultimate protection of individual existence. So this path of surrendering is a must, is a need. Experiences come as blessings, but that doesn't mean that there is a power in them. Of course there is. But there's other things that are prior and needed, and they are a part of your journey as a seeker of truth. And this going through things, continuing, makes this surrendering possible, natural. But to really surrender and to get out from this investment idea, that is difficult, and it needs a lot of purification, a lot of work, and a lot of sacrifices, because first it's not really surrender, it's just sacrifice. That sacrifice can become surrender, and that surrender is the thing that when that moment comes, there's no walls arising, nothing blocking it, there's just giving yourself. So it doesn't matter how much you convince yourself about things, it will not make a difference. I was able to put some words on this deep, deep fear. It is the fear of never dying. Or in other words, the fear that the absolute is limited. That is just survival techniques, thoughts trying to justify its own existence. I don't know why I have this fear, because it doesn't make sense intellectually to me, but it still comes in waves, and it feels it is blocking the dissolving of the ego in the absolute. And of course, there is also what I usually speak of. There is also greed, spiritual greed here, like, because there's no surrender. You see, when there's no surrender, everything becomes an investment, or practically everything. And there is greed instead of surrender. So, okay, it's like there's an inner conversation. So, to go through, like, this is a very important identity here, a VIP. So to go to the absolute, I have to have proof that the absolute is unlimited. It's better than what I'm experiencing now. And this is the big wall. You see, this is the big wall. There is no surrender. And when there's no surrender, blessings can be there, but there's no road to cross to. So in a sense, it is not blocking the dissolving of the ego into the absolute. It is the actual blockage, because in a sense, Those experiences were there for sure. It was the fruit of some work, yes, but to go beyond that, the mindset has to change, not as something that I will gain, not gaining the absolute, but surrendering to it. And surrender, it means that it is for the better or for the worst. It's not just for the better, or I have to have some clear indications that it is an improvement. This is not the attitude of the seeker of truth. At the beginning, the waves were extremely violent, causing anxiety attacks and the need to consciously deny it. Yes, it is like this. Those first experiences, they come and just and depending on the level of attachments and all of this, it can be very violent, and people tend to deny it, yes. Which I never do, but I felt I had no choice but denying it, yes. One time I was able to let it come through me, and I lived a profound merging into infinite. At its most deeper stage, there was no ego at all. After that, I thought the fear was gone, but it still comes into waves, but weaker than before. Weaker than before because there was a vision, and that's not a belief system. That is touching the life of it, and that is what really opens. You see, because in the other post that I was commenting, he was saying that knowledge takes the freedom in a sense, but it's absolutely the other way around. It is the freedom that brings real knowledge, real understanding. It's not knowledge, it was understanding. So that blessing of that experience of merging came, but still, that is from the divine towards you as an individual consciousness, but what needs to change is your individual consciousness towards the divine. And sometimes people start by the upper stages and then they have to finish the lower ones. Sometimes it is the other way around. There's no rule absolutely whatsoever. So what is missing there is the attitude of the seeker of truth, and that is surrender. And that is developed, that takes birth inside of you through sacrifice, through the change of the mindset, not as something that I will gain and I want to gain, but something that I surrender to, and I want nothing else in return. And this is why there are these tests that come into your path. And if you embrace them, if you go through the tests, they usually mean sacrificing something which is dear to you, or else there wouldn't be nothing to sacrifice. But usually it is like this, so that from the individual point of view, beyond this level of belief, because you may believe that you have something to gain from the absolute infinity, but that's not your reality. So when you are faced with something to sacrifice, when something is being asked for you to sacrifice, there is nothing, those ideas will not convince you. For the majority, some they will get convinced and they sacrifice, but it's not sacrifice, is investment. But okay, eventually it will come back again and again and again, and eventually it goes into the right direction. Eventually. Sometimes it's a long road for those ones, but for the majority, making that sacrifice, in a way, it has to bring surrender. A little bit, it is full of little bits, and it grows and it develops this inner attitude of surrendering. And no fear arises into the one that has surrendered everything, that lives in surrender, that has no, it reaches a point that there's no preferences, there's nothing there, there's just silence. So when the kiss of eternity comes, no walls arise, because there are no walls there. And this VIP complex that I have to gain the best and the highest, this has to disappear. It has to be the opposite mindset. It doesn't matter how it is. It doesn't matter the cost of it. It doesn't matter anything but dissolving into the divine. It's not a mantra. You can repeat that mantra. Yes, and you can bring this conviction to yourself. But understand, if you're serious, you're going to be tested. And those tests are your opportunity to rise to that which you're trying to bring into yourself. It's an opportunity. So people say, do I have to let go of this or that? That is a very childish question. If you're really working, you will see the obstacles, you will see your difficulties, and if you're really thirsty, you will put aside what needs to be put aside and live the consequences of that. And that is what brings preparation. Preparation. So all these things, from possessions to the ultimate possession, which is the life of the body, all of these things have to be surrendered. And in a way, all of these things will be tested. And when nothing of those things matter compared to the divine, to going back home, or to dissolve, or depending from where you're coming, it doesn't matter. When this attitude is there as a natural expression, then these walls will not arise. So if you have more questions about this subject, you can send and I will answer. So there's another question here. How do I really distinguish experience? If they are something real that's happening, or if it's just my mind game illustration play, how to know? Well, first we have to clarify if this is in a spiritual context. And depending what are you... Because in reality, everything is just a mind game, in a sense. But divine experiences, it's like you're in your little bubble, and that makes a hole in it and fills it up with something much higher, much more intense. Then it goes away, everything comes back to normal, more or less, but the memory is there. And that memory is your access point to that experience. And that experience, if it is a spiritual experience, the vibration is still there. And those experiences, you should not talk about them to anybody, because that weakens the vibration. But it may disappear, but it is there, and you can tune with it, feel it again. And this helps you in a lot of different ways. So if you can make it the context a little better, well, then I can answer it better also. So one of the big difficulties for seekers is to detach themselves from the languages, the philosophies and all of that. And when they hear something that is not in tune with that, they tend to dismiss it. Well, you have to go beyond this. And usually when I speak about the life of the process, the guidance, seekers tend to do, but what is that? And that question that comes a lot of times, it is quite revealing of the state that things are. And this is for you to understand that you need to go beyond this which is now guiding the thing. This needs to learn surrender, to wait for divine guidance, and then to apply it, whatever that means. So strengthening the mind, spiritually speaking, is to train it to abandon its preferences, desires, what its notions of best or worst, and surrender, 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 surrender. Okay. So next satsang will be Sunday, probably. Sunday, 9 o'clock, Brazilian time, UTC -3. Until then, remember, it is not philosophies, it is the life behind them. Make your goal, your direction to touch that life instead of just holding on to concepts and waiting for these mixing this context that will bring something. It's not. There is life behind it. If you're not touching it, you're just being an obstacle into your path. Okay, that's all for today. Till Sunday, make it real for you.